everyone, today I'm going to be talking about the decathlon and how all these random 10 events all got thrown together and someone thought it'd be a cool idea to do all these things and make it an event itself. So I'm first going to start off with its ancient history. I'm not going to go over the history of every single event in the decathlon because they all deserve their own video, and also it would probably take forever. But if you don't know what a decathlon is, for reference, here are the 10 events that are a part of it. So you have the 100-meter sprint, the long jump, the shot put, the high jump, the 400-meter sprint, the 110-meter hurdles, the discus throw, the pole vault, the javelin throw, and the 1500-meter run. So essentially, it's a lot of running, jumping, and throwing. Now, the decathlon does have some ties to ancient Greek history in the ancient Greek Olympics. Now, the word for the decathlon comes from the Greek word deca, meaning 10, and the other Greek word athos, which means feet. So when you say decathlon, deca, 10 feet. So you're doing 10 feats of physical activity. Hence, that's where the name comes from. Now, the event actually developed from an ancient pentathlon, which had 5 feats in it. Penta meaning 5. And it's actually different than what you would think the modern pentathlon is today. Now, in this ancient pentathlon, there were 5 events: the long jump, discus throw, javelin, a sprint, and a wrestling match. Now, this pentathlon was introduced into the ancient Olympic Games at around 708 BCE and was probably one of the most popular events at the Games. Now, this pentathlon was also not just held at Olympic events, but also lots of religious festivals that celebrated Greece and their physical achievements and stuff. 10-event competition that we know of today was actually developed by the American Amateur Championship in 1884. Now, this event in 1884 didn't have the 10 events that I mentioned earlier that are in the kind of modern decathlon. However, they did have a couple different events, but eventually in 1890 they figured out the standard events that we have in the decathlon today. Now, the first international decathlon was held at the 1904 Olympic Games, but it wasn't an official event as it was one of those kind of showcase or exhibition games, because a lot of people hadn't actually heard of a decathlon outside of America, and in the 1904 Olympics was held in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, it was later dubbed an official event as part of the Olympic Games for the 1912 Olympics in Stockholm, Sweden. At the 1912 Stockholm, Sweden Olympic Games, we meet one of the greatest Olympic athletes, probably one of the greatest athletes in the entire world, who competed in the decathlon, and his name was Jim Thorpe. Now, at this Olympic Games, he won the pentathlon and the decathlon and competed in the individual long jump and high jump events. Now, in 1912, the pentathlon consisted of the long jump, javelin throw, 200-meter dash, discus throw, and a 1500-meter run. Overall, out of all of his events, which would be 15, including the pentathlon and the decathlon, he won 8 out of those events. Also won the decathlon by over 700 points before the person who came in second place. So he was like really good at what he was doing here. So, random side note, apparently someone had stolen his shoes just before he was going to do a long jump event, and he found some shoes in the garbage and just threw them on and went for it, and ended up winning and stood on the podium with these garbage shoes that he found. So Jim Thorpe is known as being one of the best athletes at this Olympic Games and one of the best athletes within the entire Olympic Games. And as the story goes, upon winning the gold medal at the decathlon, King Gustav V of Sweden said to Thorpe, "You, sir, are the world's greatest athletes," to which he replied, "Thanks, King. I don't know how you can get any more badass than just saying, oh yeah, thanks, King. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm the greatest athlete. Yeah, thanks, man. Cool." Now, that whole story about saying thanks, King, isn't totally confirmed, but I'd like to think it's true because this guy sounds pretty cool. Now, those who won the decathlon were considered the world's greatest athlete because what they were doing was they're doing a variety of different events, and whoever did those events kind of the best of, they were the best all-around athlete. So in 1912, Jim Thorpe was considered the world's best athlete. However, when he returned to the United States, he joined a kind of semi-professional and/or professional sports teams for things like basketball, American football, and baseball. Yes, he was on like multiple professional teams for sports. Now, because he joined all these professional organizations and was being paid for his kind of athletics achievements, the Olympic Committee basically stripped him of all of his medals because he violated their very strict amateur status. He also really wasn't allowed to compete at the Olympics after that, too. Fortunately, he has a really cool story, but also a sad story, as the Olympic Committee just decided because he was getting paid that he was no longer allowed to be an Olympian, and they stripped him of all his medals. Still at for a time, and is still today considered one of the world's greatest athletes. Now, after the 1912 games, the kind of table and setup for which order the different events went in and how many days they were apart changed over the past kind of 100 years or so. Now, up until World War II, the decathlon was dominated by Scandinavians, specifically Swedes and people from Norway, and the Americans, of course. So here's a bit of a rundown of what happened after World War II with the decathlon. So another super talented American athlete by the name of Bob Mathias won gold in the decathlon in 1940 at the London Olympic Games, which was also the first games after World War II. He was also 17 at this time, and when he won this gold medal, it made him the youngest Olympic champion in history up to that point. It was also his only third ever decathlon that he had ever actually competed in and successfully finished, so I mean, he was pretty talented to say the least. Later, Bob Mathias would return for the 1952 Olympic Games, where he re-broke his world record and won gold again. Now, he led a very, very talented group of Americans to sweep the podium for gold, silver, and bronze, all for the United States during this Olympic Games. He also won by more than 900 points, which is considered the largest margin in Olympic history in a decathlon. He later retired at the age of 21. When it comes to the 1960s, the decathlons kind of revamped, introducing new scoring strategies which made these kind of big 700 to 900 points lead a little bit more difficult to achieve, and kind of balanced a point system for the remainder of the events, which is similar to the kind of scoring system we have in the decathlon as of today. So in the early 1970s, in the height of the Cold War, the Soviet Union, East Germany, and Poland all began promoting this decathlon sport within their kind of athletic repertoires. Now, this rivalry between the USA and the USSR / GDR really sparked as it became kind of this struggle for the communist East and the democratic West. Now, the reason the USSR and the GDR probably started to promote the decathlon in athletics programs was for probably one of these two reasons, or both. So, to begin, that this sport was really dominated by the US at this time. A lot of people who were very successful in it were Americans, and basically what they wanted to do was just try and beat Americans at a sport they were really, really good at. Another reason was probably because the sport, whose ever athlete kind of won the event was considered the world's greatest athlete. And what better way to promote communism than to say, hey, look, we've got the world's greatest athlete here. And they also beat America. So like, look, we're good, we're awesome, we're cool. I mean, it's probably one of those two reasons. Actually, it's probably both of those reasons. You know, two birds, one stone kind of thing. Now, what's very interesting is that the Soviet Union actually succeeded in kind of toppling America in their decathlon dominance. Nikolai Avalov, a Soviet, shows up at the 1972 Munich Games and broke the world record, winning the Olympic championship. That year, another Soviet, Leonid Litvinenko, and a Pole, Katus, won the silver and bronze respectively. The decathlon race in the 1972 Olympic Games was one of the closest in Olympic history to date. And with these kind of communist countries toppling the US, it was a really big kind of show of power and big bravado saying, hey, we beat you, ha ha ha. I mean, Olympics during the Cold War is like a whole other thing all on its own, but there's little bits and pieces in here that are really, really interesting. Well, probably one of the most well-known decathletes is Caitlyn Jenner, who competed in the men's decathlon at the 1967 Montreal Olympic Games. Now, Jenner had set 2 world records in the decathlon before the 1976 Olympic Games and was a shoo-in basically for an Olympic medal, and practically went in and won every single competition they ever competed in too. Caitlyn Jenner was one of the first people was one of the first Americans who had won in a little while, especially considering the last Olympic Games where it was swept by communism, essentially. Jenner was not able to compete at the next Olympic Games because in 1980, the US boycotted the 1980 Moscow Games as they were headbutting each other during the Cold War again. Now this really affected the American decathlon roster. As the 1980 Games, a lot of American athletes kind of retired, and it took another 20 years before another American won a gold medal by the name of Dan O'Brien in 1966. After the whole big double Olympic boycott, a couple more athletes won some medals. The curtain lifted, the Berlin Wall fell down, people broke and created new world records. There was a lot of running, jumping, throwing, catching, leaping, that sort of thing. That all kind of happens in the 80s. Now from the 2000s, the sport has kind of been recently dominated by Americans again, but that is changing in very recent years. The sport has expanded greatly, especially in Europe, and out of the 5 top decathletes of all time, there are only 2 Americans and 2 Czech. Also with a Canadian being in the top 10, Damian Warner, just throwing that out there, that Canada's creeping up hopefully on the top 5. Cross your fingers. I've gone on this whole video and not mentioned any women doing the decathlon, and that's because they're not really allowed to. As of right now, women can only compete in the heptathlon at the Olympic level and a lot of other international Olympic competitions. Now, men can compete in the heptathlon at the International Associations of Athletic Federation events, but not in the Olympic Games. At least there's kind of some equality there. But fortunately, in 2001, the IAAF approved events for the women's decathlon. Now, they're not the same decathlons as they are in men's and women's. There's a couple little changes which are just a little dumb. Not going to be the same decathlon. For the women, the javelin, shot put, and discus weigh a fair bit less. Also, the women are doing a 100-meter sprint hurdle as opposed to the men's 110-meter sprint hurdle. I mean, what's an extra 10 meters to a decathlete? I don't know why they had to change that. That just seems dumb. Like, what's an extra 10 meters to, like, Usain Bolt? He still probably would have the world record and would still be the world's fastest man and win all the 100 meters, but whatever. Current women's world record holder in the decathlon is Austria Skijut of Lithuania. Eventually, hopefully, and possibly, there will be a women's decathlon at the Olympic Games and maybe even the men's heptathlon. Now, the decathlon today, the current world record holder is Ashton Eaton of the USA, which he earned in 2015. And if you were to look at kind of individual record events from people who compete in decathlons and world records or best kind of individual events for people who specific on one specific sport, you'll see that there's not actually too big of a margin between them. So when I look at the 100-meter sprint world record, which is held by Usain Bolt, he runs at 9.58 seconds, whereas Canadian decathlete Damian Warner ran the 100 meters in 10.15 seconds, which isn't too far off when you think about it in a sprint. It's not too far. Look at the pole vault, the world record is 6.16 meters, whereas the decathlete record is 5.76 meters. And probably one of the closest is in the high jump, where Canadian decathlete Derek Druland jumped 2.28 meters, and the world record holder actually has it at 2.45. So not like too far. So no wonder they're considered the world's greatest athletes. They basically have to be Olympically level good at 10 different events and be like some of the best at 10 different events. So of course, that's why they're considered the world's greatest athletes. So thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed that quick little introduction to the history of the decathlon. There's so many different bits and pieces in the decathlon that I could do a whole other video on, and don't worry, I plan to eventually. So thanks for sticking around and watching. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. If you liked it or think of something else that I could add or do another video on, please leave a comment down below, and thanks for sticking around. Bye. Now, oh, I can't say any of these names. Nikolay Avilov, Leonid Tvienko, Austria Skijut of Lithuania.